Hey, it's Zane here and welcome back. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for tuning in, and please remember to give the video a like if you get value from today's content. But today I want to get into the part that Bitcoin can play in helping you to achieve financial freedom. And I think financial freedom is a goal for many, many people, and I'm sure it is for you as well. But it's something that doesn't just happen. I believe that we've been sold a lie. We've been sold this false promise that if we work for 30 or 40 years, that we're going to get to retirement age and there's going to be enough in our retirement account, superannuation, 401k, to be able to afford us a happy, healthy, comfortable retirement. But I think the reality is that most people are now waking up to the fact that that is not going to be the case. Certainly for about 95% of the population, most people realise that they don't have enough in their superannuation accounts. We know in Australia that the average balance of a super account for men who are aged between 60 and 64 is $400,000. For women, it's about $300,000. And so, that is simply not enough if you've got, a good 20, 25 years plus left in you, and particularly if you want to enjoy life and, go on some travel and adventures and, actually have enough money to be able to do things that you foresee and that you enjoy, that kind of money is simply not going to be enough. And I think a lot of people now, with the cost of living crisis and the growing wealth gap, the housing crisis, all of these things, they're starting to realize that they need to do something. And so I believe that if you're in that boat, you really need to be looking very seriously at Bitcoin. Now, I realize that many of you are already on your Bitcoin journey. I've got some people who have been in Bitcoin in this community who share in the comments section often. I really want to thank you for that, if that's you, because I know that people are getting a lot of value from your wisdom and your insight. So please keep that coming. But I know there's a lot of people who A, don't feel like they have enough Bitcoin, or B, they're thinking about getting involved in Bitcoin, but they haven't yet taken the first step. And so today I want to focus on how much is enough. And specifically, I want to focus on this figure of 0.1 as a short to medium term goal. And the reason why I want to really concentrate on 0.1 as a figure, which essentially is 10% of a Bitcoin, which is 10 million Satoshis, remembering there's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. So 0.1 or 10% is 10 million sats, 10 million Satoshis. If you can focus on that number, and if you're not already at that acquisition, at that level when it comes to acquiring Bitcoin, I really encourage you to get to that level as quickly as you possibly can. Now, if we look at today's price, I'm going to explain what this could mean to you in the years ahead in a moment. But if we look at today's price, it's hovering around that 85,000 US dollar mark. And so 10% of that is 8,500 US dollars. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that that's a fair amount of change for most people. But I think that if we're being absolutely honest with ourselves, we would realize that if this is not so much life and death, but if our financial futures are dependent on this, we can find a way to beg, borrow, or steal that amount of money, sell whatever we've got that's surplus to our needs, to get ourselves 8,500 US dollars, which is around about 13,000 Australian dollars. You and I can do that if we really believe in what we're doing. And so I think for most people, they can beg, borrow, or steal $8,500 to be able to get into Bitcoin at a reasonable level. And I think 0.1 is a fantastic goal, because what we know is that if your time horizon is anything beyond 10 years, but more specifically 15 to 20 years, then 0.1 Bitcoin, based on Bitcoin's past growth history, is going to be very, very significant in the years ahead, and I believe is going to be more than what you would need to live really comfortably for the rest of your life. So I want to explain why that is. First thing we have to understand is that Bitcoin is finite. We have to understand that there's only 21 million Bitcoin, we have to understand that there's only 63, 64 millionaires in the world. So not even every single millionaire will be able to acquire one whole Bitcoin. That's the first thing to understand. We also have to understand that there's only 3 to 5% of people, of the population, who have any exposure to Bitcoin. And if you look at the trajectory of Bitcoin's growth, its adoption curve, what we see is that it's tracking almost perfectly with the adoption of the internet and with the iPhone. And so you begin to realize that due to Metcalfe's law, which essentially states that the value of a network, which is what Bitcoin is relative to its rate of adoption, which is essentially following all of the other major technological breakthroughs that we've had over the last 20 years, what you see is that the value of that network becomes exponential. And so we have to understand we are very early on the Bitcoin adoption curve, and a lot of people think, they look at the price of Bitcoin and they have this kind of unit bias where they say, oh, one Bitcoin is $85,000, so I've missed the boat, I'm too late, I wish I had bought it at $5,000. Those people who got in early, they've all benefited, but I'm too late, so I can't benefit from it. But that really is just a failure of your ego, as Jack Mallers often says. You know, having this mind block that prevents you from getting on board to Bitcoin because you think you're too late or somebody bought it cheaper than you did is really just a failure of your ego. It's an excuse that you come up with to prevent you from doing the work to realize that the value of Bitcoin over the course of time is exponential. So it doesn't really matter whether you got in 5 years ago or today, the value of this network is going to continue to increase because it is absolutely finite. And so anybody who says, I'm too late, I missed it, I wish I coulda, shoulda, woulda, those are the people that really need to take another look at this and just spend 10 hours, 15 hours reading a book, listening to some podcasts, doing some work, and then they'll soon realize that all of Bitcoin's exponential growth is actually ahead of us. And this is why 10 million sats, 10 million satoshis, 0.1 of a Bitcoin, 10% of a Bitcoin is going to be a significant number. It is going to put you in a very, very elite group. I think it's going to put you in the top 1% of Bitcoin holders worldwide. And like I said, this is why I'm encouraging my kids, my daughters in their 20s, to get to 0.1 Bitcoin as quickly as they can. They have time on their side. You know, I know that for them to try and save for a house deposit, particularly somewhere like here on the Gold Coast or any major city in Australia, you know, it would take them essentially somewhere between 10 and 15 years to be able to save just enough to get into the housing market with a deposit, with a down payment. And that's not taking into account what the price of homes might be 10, 15 years down the track from now. And so for me, I believe it's far better, rather than looking at real estate now, to be looking at Bitcoin being digital real estate as a far better asset to be protecting and preserving your capital, saving for a deposit for a home if that's one of your goals. But I just think it's a far better investment when you look at the historical growth rate of Bitcoin, the fact that it's fixed, finite, the fact that it's uncensorable, the fact that it's unconfiscatable, the fact that it's decentralized. All of these factors really, for me, attribute to why Bitcoin is the ultimate asset for everybody to be looking at right now. So let's get back to 0.1. 0.1 is $8,500 roughly today. So the price of Bitcoin is about 85,000. So 0.1 is $8,500, which is around about 13,000 Australian dollars. If you look at Bitcoin's compound annual growth rate over the last 10 years, Bitcoin's annual compound growth rate has hovered somewhere between 50 and 55%. Now, if you extrapolate that out over the next 15 years, what you find is that 0.1 Bitcoin, and I just jotted down some notes here, in 15 years at 55% CAGR, compound annual growth rate, in 15 years, that $8,500 is going to equal $5 million. $5 million in 15 years. So if you're 50 years old, and we know in Australia the age, the retirement age where you're able to go and collect your superannuation is typically 65 years of age. They keep changing the rules all the time, so at the moment it's 65, but you never know whether they're going to bring it forward, take it back. There's a whole new thing going on now with super where they want to bring in taxation on unrealised gains. So a lot of people who have over $3 million parked in their superannuation accounts, they're getting nervous as to what the future is going to hold for that. This is why people are now looking to set up SMSFs. They believe there's going to be a flurry into SMSFs because people want to get their capital into decentralized digital assets such as Bitcoin, because they want to have that autonomy. If the rules keep changing, they want to be the custodian of that wealth rather than having it all centralized with all these middlemen involved. And so that's just another side thought when it comes to superannuation and Bitcoin. And if you have 15 years to retirement and you can find the capital to acquire 10% of a Bitcoin, then I believe if you did nothing else rather than to put that into cold storage and just wait for the next 15 years, I think you're going to be very, very pleasantly surprised as to how high that valuation is going to grow over the next 15 years. Now, obviously, it would be far better for you to continually allocate to dollar cost average over time. Anytime you have spare cash, spare capital, to keep topping up that, because that's, of course, going to get you there a lot faster. But just 10% of a Bitcoin today at the current or historical growth rate of the last 10 years is going to get you to $5 million, $5 million US dollars, that is. Now, I'm not sure about you, but if I was thinking forward 15 years from now, I would be very content knowing that I'm going to retire at 65. I'll in fact be 67 in 15 years, but I'm not sure about you. But do you think, let me know in the comments below, do you think that $5 million US dollars would be enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life? Obviously, you'd want to put some of that into income generating assets. Maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you just want to allocate and sell down a portion of your Bitcoin over the course of 10 years where you want to live life a little bit, and then the rest of it you'll just keep in storage. It'll still be growing at that compound growth rate over time. And so you wouldn't be obviously cashing the whole lot in, you'd just be selling down to fund your lifestyle. Some people will use that as a strategy. Other people will borrow against their Bitcoin. If the compound growth rate of Bitcoin stays at anything above 30%, you'd be crazy to sell any of your Bitcoin. You'll be far better off to just borrow against it. And we already know that there are several loan products coming out in this area of Bitcoin. And financializing this asset is only going to become more and more prevalent in the years ahead. And so we have to keep all of this in mind. Now, what happens if we extrapolate this over 20 years? This is what's really fascinating. And, we know that, the great Albert Einstein, we know that he was a massive advocate and teacher of the eighth wonder of the world, which was, of course, the law of compounding. And when you apply this to finance, we begin to see just the impact that it has on our ability to create wealth, because in 20 years, it goes from $5 million in 15 years to $40 million at the same compound annual growth rate. So if you were able to hang on for 20 years instead of 15, then that $8,500 US dollars you have now is going to go from 5 million in 15 years to 20 million in 20 years. And this is why you may only sell down a portion of your Bitcoin for the first 5 years of your retirement and benefit from the continued upside from the rest. That could be one strategy for you to consider. So we have to keep getting back to the reality that we're not too late to Bitcoin. Even if we allocate a small amount of capital, and I'm sure you would agree that $8,500 is not a lot of capital when we're talking about changing the trajectory of our financial life, when it comes to being financially free in the future, when it comes to having a comfortable retirement. And I believe this opportunity is here now, but it's going to close. Chile's just saying hello. I believe the opportunity is going to close because nation states are coming, institutions are coming, the rest of the world is coming, and we are still very, very early on this adoption curve. We have to understand that Bitcoin is absolute scarcity. It is finite, it is fixed, it is decentralized, it is portable wealth. It is something that you and only you control when you store it properly in your own hardware wallet and in private cold storage. And so, that is another aspect of Bitcoin just that makes it so potent in this changing world that we're in, where we're having constant changes to the rules and property rights and the centralization and changes to the taxation system. It's very hard to plan for the future. I'm sure you would agree when the rules keep changing. With Bitcoin, the rules can never change. And so just keep that in mind. Everything is ahead of us. Get to point one Bitcoin as quickly as you can if you haven't already. If you know people in your life who are thinking about getting into Bitcoin, share this video with them. Encourage them to get to at least 0.1 Bitcoin as quickly as they can. If that's too much, start with 0.01. Start with 0.01, still a million Satoshis. You'll get that for 850 odd US dollars. But at least that's a starting point. Get into the game, and then just dollar cost average over time and find your way to that 0.1 as quickly as you can. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there today. I want to thank you for tuning in. The whole discussion around retirement, financial freedom, all of these things I think is important, particularly if you're in your middle stages of life. So this is an area I want to keep sharing about and really encouraging you to get on this Bitcoin life raft and to help as many people as you can. Please leave me your comments. I'd love to hear them. Remember to give the video a like, share and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's try and get my channel to 1,000 subscribers. Getting there slowly but surely. I had a goal to get there by the end of this year, but it's happening a lot quicker than I thought. So I want to thank you all for your support. If you're new here, please subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. This is Zane signing out. Have a great day. Bye for now.